Hello and welcome to the South Carolina Communities That Care Survey Administration Training. My name is Zuri Murphy. I'll be leading the training today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd also like to introduce Crystal Gordon, who's the Prevention Consultant with DAODAS and is the State CAS Coordinator.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Crystal Gordon. We are excited that you are on this call this morning and look forward to helping you learn more about how you can administer the CTC survey. And we hope you get good data results from your participation. Thank you.
Okay, so we're just going to go through a few little housekeeping items. The phone line is muted, and you all also know how to mute yourselves, which is *6. In order to ask questions, you can feel free to ask them throughout. You'll click the chat button. The red arrow on the screen shows you where that chat button is. And then you'll type in your comment or question into the chat box that says "at all." If you just want to direct a question toward me, you will need to click that small little triangle, and it will say "at Zuri" or "at host," one of the two. Some questions will be answered as I go through the webinar, and others will be answered at the end. We'll have a good amount of time at the end to make sure that everyone's on the same page. If you have a question for your specific program, please contact me or Crystal after the webinar. Also, I want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. So just a few things about the South Carolina Communities That Care survey. It is being provided by DAODAS, the South Carolina Department of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services. The focus of the student survey is on behaviors that can result in injury or impede positive development among youth. The survey also includes an assessment of risk and protective factors, which are attitudes and experiences that research have shown to predict these behaviors. The survey includes questions about experiences and attitudes related to alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use, violent behaviors, as well as related risk and protective factors. The South Carolina CTC survey is both voluntary and anonymous. Student confidentiality is strictly protected. No student names or IDs are collected as a part of the survey, and answer sheets will be read by a computer. MSTAR Research was hired to manage the CTC survey distribution and collection training process, and today we'll review the process of administering the survey for survey administrators as well as county representatives. Some of the protocol we'll review may not apply to you, so just bear with us as we make sure everyone has what they need to complete the process. So there are 3 types of materials that survey administrators specifically need to facilitate administration of the paper version of the survey. The actual survey is 3 pages, double-sided. You'll also need answer sheets, which is 1 page, and the administration guidelines, either the paper or pencil, or if you're doing the online version, you have online version guidelines. The surveys are generic, but the answer sheets contain a barcode that is unique to each school, and they're labeled as such. It's important that these unique answer sheets are delivered to the correct school. So county reps, when you receive, I know you've already gotten your material, so you have already seen that they're labeled by school. County reps also, you'll use your tracking form to keep a record of the number of surveys that are distributed to each administrator and the number of completed answer sheets that are returned. Your tracking form is included in the box of materials that you received and will be returned back to us when you send us the answer sheet. So I'm sure that all of you have read those guidelines. Read those guidelines, but I do want to talk about the consent to survey first. Consent has to be established before you actually release the survey, and the survey is going to be administered between the 10th and the 28th. I know some of you have already done that, but consent has to be in place. So if your county is using consent forms, county reps should provide all survey administrators with a list of students who have a signed consent form on file. Only students with a signed caregiver consent form can take the survey. If your county is using passive consent, which I know most of you are, That means that caregivers were given the option to opt out and indicate if they did not want their child taking the survey. So county reps should provide survey administrators with a list of students whose caregivers opted out of the survey. And they must ensure that these students are not given the survey. So, like I said, I know that you have already read the guidelines, but I'm going to just walk you through it. You already know this, but this is a reminder. Within those guidelines is a section where you'll be reading word for word to students. This section can be found on pages 2 and 3 of the administration guidelines of the paper pencil version, and for those using the online guidelines, the instructions are on page 1 of the instrument administration guidelines. The information in the box is not to be read out loud, but below that, reading word for word is what we want you to do before you administer the survey. It may seem elementary, but it ensures that everyone receives the same instructions and completes the answer sheets correctly. If your school is administering up to 5 additional questions, those answers will be filled in at the bottom of the answer sheet where there are questions labeled Extra 1 through Extra 5. Once these instructions are read and you answer any questions that your students may have, then they can start filling out the survey. Students should not be allowed to begin before that time. So, when students actually take the survey, there are 5 things that they must have. Number 1, if you're doing the paper and pencil version, they obviously need a pencil. Doesn't have to be number 2, but it does need to be a pencil. And if you're doing the online version, there needs to be a computer for every student. Please ensure that those students who are using the pencil and paper version, that they don't fold or bend the answer sheets. Make sure that there's enough space for students to take the survey. If you can space them out every other desk, that's great. If you don't have that much room, please make sure that people aren't looking on each other's pages and that they have enough privacy. There are a lot of sensitive questions, so we want students to make sure that they can answer honestly and not have a fear that their answers are being read by adults or their classmates. Don't walk around the room or look over their shoulders, and make sure that they're completing their own surveys. Feel free to assist students when they have a question. But we're not coaching them on how they should answer the questions. Just clarify the question if they're not sure what's being asked. Only answer questions that help youth understand the items on the survey. And remind them if they don't find an answer that fits exactly, they can use the one that comes the closest. If any question does not apply to them or if they're not sure of what it means, just tell them to leave it blank. One note on the time, it actually takes about 10 to 15 minutes for the students to complete the survey, but the total administration process takes about 40 minutes. So you want to make sure you have enough time to set your computers up, take out your, pass out surveys, help students if they don't have a pencil. So just factor that in when you're setting aside time for the survey administration. Once students are done, allow them to place their completed answer sheets in a large envelope or a large box as they walk out the door. Do not take surveys and answer sheets directly from students hand to hand. We want to let them know that you are not going to be reading their answers, that you'll have no idea who they are. So explaining from the beginning that they will be submitting their answer sheets into a box on their own gives them the assurance and the trust that they can be honest and makes our survey process more reliable. Once all the answer sheets have been turned in, you can throw away the surveys, we don't need those back, and return the stack to your county rep in a timely manner. For those of you who are doing the online administration version, if possible, like I mentioned, have students sit at every other desk. And before they get there, make sure that all the computers are logged onto the survey website. It's here on the slide, and it's also in your survey administration guidelines. The link, once you click on it, you can leave that up on students' computers, and when they enter the room, instruct them not to type anything until you tell them that it's time to begin, because, of course, you need to read those instructions word for word. For those students who aren't participating, instruct them on what you'd like them to do. For example, go back to their class, work on homework, etc. But don't allow them to browse the internet and distract other students. Once all the students are seated, you've read aloud the instructions, then they can begin. So let's talk about managing the answer sheets after they're complete. This is specifically for county reps. Of course, if you're using the online version, you don't have answer sheets to mail back to your county reps. But for those schools that are using the paper survey, survey administrators collect the answer sheets and return them to the county rep, and county reps are responsible for tracking them. You'll use your tracking form to keep a record of the number of completed answer sheets that are returned to you. And once your completed answer sheets for a school are returned, you'll make a copy of them, or you can scan them and save them into an electronic folder. An example file name that you can use is on your screen, for example, CTC_answersheets_Miller Grove High, and you would also label a paper file with the school name. We've illustrated it with huge locks and chains over the computer in the file cabinet because it is extremely important that your computer is password protected, that your file cabinets are locked. They must be secure. So store the electronic files on a password-protected computer and use a file cabinet that is locked. If you, once we get your surveys that are the answer sheets that are mailed to MSTAR, a researcher will contact you. Then you can shred all the copies. You must delete all the electronic files of the answer sheets. And this process, the reason why we're asking you to do that is so that in the unlikely event that they're lost in the mail, we will have a backup. So that's why we're asking you to store them temporarily and make copies and or electronic copies. So when you return the materials to MSTAR, there are two things that need to go in those boxes. County reps, we've asked you to retain some of the brown boxes that you received in your original shipment. You do have those posted page stickers to put on your boxes. You need to return the answer sheets for all of your schools as well as the tracking form. That process needs to be completed by March 7th. Be sure that you go into the post office to check your postage. All materials must be postmarked by March 7th. So at this time, we want to open it up to some additional questions. We can be contacted at any time. If you need assistance, you can contact myself at zuri@mstarresearch.com. My phone number is there. I also have another MSTAR Research employee that can assist you. Her name is Michelle, and her information is there as well. And, of course, you all have Crystal's contact information if you need assistance. On this upcoming Monday, we'll send you a recording of this webinar. I know you'll want to listen to it over and over again because it was just so amazing. But you will have that as a backup, and you also can contact us if you need anything. At this time, if you'd like to type in a question into the chat box, as we talked about earlier, go ahead and do that, and we'll answer any questions that you have. If you have more specific questions about your specific administration, feel free to contact me after the webinar concludes. So someone asked, if the survey is anonymous, why does the county rep need a list of those students who did not choose to participate? So the county rep doesn't need a list. It's the survey administrators that need to know which students should not be administered the survey. So if their parents do not want them to take the survey, then we have to make sure that they're not given that survey. So the person who's actually administering the survey needs to know what students should not be allowed to take the survey. I hope that clarifies things. If not, okay, it did. All right, great, thank you. The paper version does not need to use a number 2 pencil. Any pencil is fine. What's most important is they're just filling in the bubbles completely. Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in. Thank you so much for your attention. I know this is a little bit tedious, but we do want to make sure that it's done clearly and with fidelity to what we want. And I appreciate all of you for taking the time out of your day to sit through this and also to administer the survey so that we can provide this additional information for DAODAS and for our youth. If you have any questions, again, please contact me at zuri@mstarresearch.com, and you also have Crystal's information as well. Thank you so much.